You're listening to The Main Loop, a bi-monthly podcast all about what makes games interesting, engaging, and most importantly, fun to play. Hello everybody, welcome to another episode of The Main Loop. This is episode number 8. I'm Sean Bragg, and of course I'm joined as always by Stuart Urbach. Hello, Stu.
Howdy, and Stuart is thoroughly disappointed we're improving this podcast. Yeah,
to everybody who, to everybody who thought that the show had just ended and we didn't say anything, surprise and congratulations. The show is back after, I had the flu and basically was at death's door. And then we had every technical thing go wrong and just prevented us getting it back into the normal groove of things. And to everybody that was like happy that the show had died, I'm sorry, but we're back. We're back from the dead. So if you didn't unsubscribe,
be damned.
Yeah, HBD. So a lot has happened. There's a lot to talk about.
I got a microphone, so if I don't sound like, utter garbage now, that might be why.
I think you sound great. You sound phenomenal. So this is great. This is going to be a good show. So I'm not even sure where to start because frankly, there's been a lot going on since the last time we were able to successfully do a show. There's Blizzard stuff going on. There's the Nintendo Switch has come and gone. I mean, we couldn't stop talking about it before the thing came out, and now it's out, and we're just like, oh, yeah, I guess that happened.
And by out, you mean not available in any store known to man.
Yeah, that is what I meant, actually. That's what I was going for with that sentence. So,
yeah. Not that I've looked at every store known to man. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was just talking to people at work today. I finally got my carrying case for my Switch, so I actually brought it to work today to make people jealous, to show all the plebs. And a friend of mine at work was just like, okay, I'm just going to start calling every store and just seeing when I should go try and get one. I was like, all right, good luck. Godspeed.
Yeah, I saw a Polygon article today where it was like, hey, Best Buy has some Switch material, some Switch available online for a while. And then I clicked refresh, and there was just a little update at the bottom. It was like, well, it's gone.
Yeah, we had some.
That was fun.
And it's gone now, so have fun with that. Yeah.
I'm actually assuming like Google's April Fools will just be like, click here for the Nintendo Switch.
Yeah, for April Fools, Google's just going to show, like, all of Google Shopping is going to show the Switch in stock across every website. Like, just always. They're gonna like inject scripts onto like Amazon and stuff, so it shows as like add to cart. That's great.
You know what would be the worst April Fools that I could see Nintendo doing? They're like, for April Fools, hey, the Switch is ready, and then just no one believes them.
I could see that.
We tricked you all. We're actually competent.
Well, I mean, speaking of the Switch, I guess it's at least worth mentioning that I did get one. I got one at launch, and it's phenomenal. And I know a lot of people who listen to the show are tired of us talking about the Switch. So we're working on a way to not eat up a normal episode. We're working on a way to kind of do something special to, now that it's been out for a few weeks, talk about the Switch and Breath of the Wild and everything that's going on about that. So we won't make this the Switch cast ongoing because there's plenty of other things to talk about. I will say that I downloaded last night Snake Pass, which was one of the games on my list of excited for this coming out on the Switch. It's another sort of retro platform. It's not really a platformer. There's no jumping involved. You can't jump because
it's like
he plays a snake.
Puzzler, right?
It is much more puzzly. You have to figure out how to move around. So you control a snake. The control scheme is really interesting. You hold down like the right trigger to accelerate forward, like you're driving a car. Oh. And then you just use the left stick to steer, but you go faster by swooshing back and forth. So you have to get into like a rhythm of like actually like moving the snake body back and forth as you go, and that's how you can actually pick up speed. And then you can use A to lift your head up and try to actually like get up on things, so you can actually get a little vertical. And then you can like wrap yourself around. If there's like a pipe or something, you can get up and try to wrap yourself around it. It actually feels more natural than I expected. Like wrapping yourself around the pipe feels very like, oh, it's just, this is how my brain expected it to work. But I haven't gotten to spend much time with it. But based on it alone, I'm really excited about a lot of the games coming out for the Switch, because I think it feels really well done, and like Nintendo may have actually made a console that developers are going to enjoy developing for.
I think I just heard the world exploding. Sorry, one sec.
What does that even mean?
I don't know. I can't even fathom a world where like Nintendo did something correct.
Yeah.
What
I mean, other than the fact that they still are using like proprietary cartridges that publishers have to buy, in bulk from them, and that whole deal. Yeah.
Well, you can't have it too good.
But I will say, Nintendo, one area where they have killed it is far and away just their CDN, like their content delivery network for the eShop. That and for just like software updates. I mean, there was a software update a couple days ago. It downloaded in what felt like no time and installed really quickly. And when I bought Snake Pass, it was like played Zelda for maybe 10 minutes and the game was downloaded. And we have pretty good Wi-Fi here at the house, but they've done a really good job at alleviating like the main complaints, which is like, I remember when I bought a PS4 and it came with a download code for The Last of Us HD, and it was great. The PS4 is set up. Let's download this game. Oh, wait, a system update is required first. Okay, that took like an hour and a half. And now there's a controller firmware update, and that took 30 minutes. And now let's download the game, and it won't be downloaded until tomorrow sometime. So I'm just going to bed now. And everything I've downloaded from on the Switch has just been like incredibly fast. I don't know how they did it.
Yeah, and I even heard that like the people who had experienced some hardware weirdness with their Joy-Cons, like Nintendo's will like fix that for you in a matter of days now if you send your controller in.
Yeah, and I was even looking. It looked like the iFixit was showing that it's a really simple fix that they're doing. But yeah, it's great, and they're fixing it for free and quickly, and it seems like it's been a really good rollout so far.
Well, except for the availability thing, but I'm not jealous or bitter about that at all.
Oh, it's great. This is the first time in my life that I've ever had something that was like the new thing that people can't get. I've just never been a midnight release guy, and so it feels I'm reveling in it. I might go get my Switch during this show and just at random times rub it on my body to sort of just drive home.
Like, hey Stuart, I'm playing Zelda, and just like shove it at the Skype.
Okay, well, let's talk about some newsy type stuff. A big announcement that I was not expecting at all today from Blizzard, which is that Heroes of the Storm is entering beta. It's actually entered beta. I installed the beta earlier this evening for 2.0. Like, they're coming out with a total overhaul of not the core gameplay, nothing like that. And it seems like the engine is the same, but everything outside of an individual match has pretty much been changed. All of the player progression, character progression, unlocks, cosmetic stuff, currency. I mean, it's a pretty big change, and a lot of it I'm really excited about. I don't know if you got a chance to watch that video or to look through any of the press release yet.
I did right after I was done with the meeting. Where you sent it to me with just like, oh my gosh, all caps. I was like, what's going on? Am I about to die? Yeah, it seems pretty exciting. Like the thing I was most interested by, like from the start, was just the fact that level caps were getting decreased pretty significantly. So, like, I can hit level, like, the gap between level 5 and level 10 isn't, like, 100 games per character. Because that would get really annoying where you're like, yay, I hit level 5, I got, like, 500 coins. Okay, I'm just gonna go, like, wait another century to hit level 10. That was fun.
Especially, I mean, I got into the game right at the end of, like, the technical alpha. And so Vala was a character that I unlocked like right when I got the game, because you got her for free for buying Diablo 3 Reaper of Souls, which that came out in 2013 or 14. and she's my most played character, and I'm still just at level 9 with her, and it is such a slow grind to get to that level 10 mark where you could buy the master skin. And it looks like they've really flattened that out. Like after, like the jump from 9 to 10 is much smaller, and after that it's just like you can keep leveling up pretty much at infinity. I mean, you can go as high as you want with each hero.
Yeah, and you can also go as high as you want with your personal character level 2 now, because it's just like adding all of your heroes up, which is shockingly simple and just kind of makes sense.
Yeah, and I like that approach of having it not be tied to this external like win rate or thing like that. I mean, obviously, it's the experience you have with all the different heroes. So I like that if you only have like 2 heroes that you play, and they might be really high, but your player level is going to be a lot lower than if you get good with a lot of diverse different heroes. So I like that approach of really encouraging people to not just quote unquote main a single hero.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, I still feel like I'm hopeful that it gets more people involved in the game long term, just because I prefer it as more of a casual player to something like League of Legends.
Yeah.
Where I can just like read through a character, and like even if it's my first time, like the skill pathing and everything in game, I can figure that out and not have to just like get a build guide and kind of flail. And Sean is giving me a motion to keep talking, and I'm apparently supposed to just continue eating up airtime. But so I'm really excited about stuff like that. I think it's a pretty natural progression that they would add something like a loot drop. I can't not laugh at Sean's face. But
wow.
I think those those
I get that.
crates,
I get that quite a bit, actually.
But the loot crates seem like a pretty natural progression for any game. It's like pretty standard now that's what happens.
Yeah, and one thing that I was excited about with those loot crates, and even I spent 30 minutes playing around with the beta before we started the show, and even like the master skins, which normally you had to get a hero to level 10 just to be able to buy the master skin, those have now just been renamed. Like they've just given each master skin its own actual name as a skin, and they're just available. Like normally you can buy them with the in-game currency now, or you might get them out of a loot crate.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. There are some new skins hiding in the beta. The long-awaited Primeval Diablo skin is in, which is Diablo from Diablo 3.
Oh, cool.
And really cool looking. And yeah, they've changed the in-game currency. It's a lot more. It's really like the Overwatch system. It's almost identical to how Overwatch's system works. Overwatch has lots of different ways to get loot crates, and the loot crates can contain not heroes, because you just get all the heroes in Overwatch for buying the game, but they can contain cosmetic items, sprays, voice lines, skins, or just currency, whatever the currency is in that game. And then if you get duplicates of something you already have, you just get some gold or gems or whatever it is. And that's the way it's going to work in Heroes. If you get, like a loot crate might contain gems, or you might get some skins and stuff. If you already own those, you'll get extra gems for them instead of getting duplicates. And you can use pretty much everything you can use to buy. It's like one form of currency is just for cosmetic stuff, and then another form will let you buy heroes with it. So it's pretty interesting. It looks like they're really trying to, that's a pretty common complaint, is that it's just, you have to buy so much stuff with real money in the game. And this is now much more, you can really be rewarded for just playing the game on a regular basis and not having to spend the money if you don't want to.
Yeah, and actually I was playing earlier today, and not the beta, but just the regular game, and like someone was mentioning the fact that like, oh, I think this character is feeding, and like they were feeding by like not really communicating with the team and just kind of going off and doing their own thing, which was, mind you, really, really annoying, and we're like, hate that person. But the other guy's like, yeah, well, I thought feeding was more like, intentionally running into towers and dying. And another person goes, yeah, I don't really see that much in Heroes. And I was thinking, I was like, yeah, that's actually like pretty rare that like people just like feed and die and just like do really stupid stuff.
Yeah.
And when I played League, that just happened all the time.
Yeah,
So I'm just like
I've
super excited.
yeah, I don't see stuff like that very often in Heroes either, and yeah, and I'm hoping we get, this will bring more people into the game, because it really is removing a lot of the real money requirements to get in there, which is exciting for me. I mean, I've spent some money in Heroes on new heroes and stuff like that, but I've been trying to just spend in-game gold lately, and it's definitely a lot easier if you are willing to spend real money. So this seems like a good step for that. Hearthstone seems to be doing similar things. Another obviously really big Blizzard IP, but they seem to really be trying to create more ways for you to unlock cards without having to spend tons and tons of money. Because every year when the new expansion comes out, it's like, well, you can get like a ton of new cards if you're willing to spend $60 on packs, or you can get like 2 packs for like the free stuff you get for playing the game.
Right.
And I get there is a level of entitlement of, I want more free things in this free game, but it's definitely nice to have the game reward you for, like, I could be playing other games and I'm choosing to spend the time in this one. So.
Yeah, and is there anything big going on with Hearthstone? I don't think so. I
don't think they from what I can tell, they're kind of sunsetting that game, and it's really winding down.
I think it's on its way out. I think they're gonna focus their development on the Nintendo Switch now.
Yeah, and Elder Scrolls Legends is just it's at a bajillion users and just blown it out of the water. So
yeah, I think Hearthstone, they're like going through their sort of announcement cycle. And it's like kind of funny now, because it feels like there are certain times of the year where Magic and Hearthstone have their previews for the new set at the same time.
Yeah, there's definitely like these overlap periods.
Dueling Mega Games, and it's like, oh my gosh, what is going on?
Dueling Mega Games was my favorite PC game company when I was a kid.
From the maker of Noob Shoes.
Yeah, Dueling Mega Games.
Is that like a movie or like a game, or no? It's an experience.
Yes, from the makers of Noob Shoes.
But actually, I'm pretty pumped by the new set. We've been getting a few different cards now, from Hearthstone Journey into Ungoro, that seem pretty interesting. They seem to be learning from their past experiences with randomness and finding ways to optimize that. And so just as like a game designer, I'm pretty excited to see what happens and how that shakes out.
Yeah, I think they've got some great stuff coming. It is definitely that interesting time of year where you sent me all the new Magic stuff that's coming out, which, can we talk about those unreadable cards? This is the ugliest things you've ever sent me. These new Magic cards, they look like rejects from an unreleased Yu-Gi-Oh set, like the playtest of an unreleased Yu-Gi-Oh set.
Yeah, like Yu-Gi-Oh matched with the Unowns from Pokemon. They're like, hey guys, we got some leftover Unown card frames. Do you want to just like throw those in there? And you know what the worst part was? The day before, they had like some announcement about some mechanics that were coming out, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna text Sean that this seems pretty cool. Then I forgot to, and then a day later I see this, and I'm like, what are we doing?
The worst part for me was that in this weird, if you haven't seen the cards, they're these weird hieroglyphic-looking artwork. They look like they're carved out of stone, and they have all these glyphs all over them. But the worst part for me is that they're mixing in real words in the glyphs, so you'll be looking at this, like up at the top, there's a row of glyphs, but it actually says a real word, but you don't notice it at first because it's this horrible glyph-looking font. It's dreadful.
Yeah, so if we can pull off into the Magic parking lot for a second, there's actually been kind of an interesting discussion that's been going around the Magic community recently that I've been looking into, which is like, and this kind of leads into that, which is how the game of Magic has kind of morphed into this point where it's like really boring, actually. And so what's kind of been happening is like two different things. One is Magic is like pushing their planeswalkers because they're trying to set them up for the Avengers meets Magic movie thing that's coming out at some point in the future, and like the planeswalkers are the main driving point, and so they create these pushed cards, which are the planeswalkers that like just wipe and define whole archetypes, right?
Right.
And on top of that, they've been getting rid of huge swaths of spells and stuff that are quote unquote considered unfun mechanics, like counter spells and land destruction, and just a number of different things. And what's interesting is this is basically turned the game into what they call grindy mid-range, because like basically it's just like everyone has these powerful creatures that cost between like 3 and 6 mana, and it's just like whoever can land them first and keep them there will probably win the game. And like there can be a lot of strategic complexity, but it makes the environments and the formats really boring.
Yeah.
Because what's happened is, and that kind of goes along with what we just talked about, where they're just like trying to pump up the value of the booster pack. And so what this like hieroglyphic BS is like every set now they have the like these like special edition cards that are from the past that aren't legal in standard but are like dolled up so they look cool, and then they're released in like 1 out of every 90 packs or something, so they're like super rare to like try to get people to purchase more.
Right.
And so it's really interesting is like from a game design perspective, reading articles by like the developers and designers of Magic is like really interesting because they're doing these really cool things at like a micro level with the game. But at a macro level, what's been happening is as Magic like faces more competition from stuff like Hearthstone and even like Duelist, and then as they like try to figure out what to do in like the new world of digital gaming and esports, it feels like they've kind of bastardized what was some of the really fun parts of Magic into like this kind of grindy, boring game, just because they're trying to make it quote unquote more entry level friendly. And so I'm kind of curious to see what happens over the next couple of years. If I mean, I know the game's more popular than ever, but it'll be interesting to see if it can kind of continue that trajectory, given what I feel is like a little bit of compromise on the design side of sort of like the underlying mechanics.
Yeah. I will say that you've been a part of me getting into Magic over the last couple of years, and I'd like to play it a lot more than I have and than I am currently. But I remember trying to get into Magic a few years ago, and it felt like the barrier to entry was pretty steep. And then even just 2 years after that, getting into it, it's the barrier to entry, like the learning curve is more like just this little speed bump. It's like a brief spike of learning curve. And then it's just like, oh, like this game makes sense. Like I can figure out how to play it now. And even playing with somebody's like old weird decks, it's like I still can pretty quickly understand what's going on. And I like that about the game. And what I actually liked, even though when I was first starting with Magic, it was frustrating. There'd be these really quick back and forths where it's like, I do this thing, your opponent, I counter it. Oh, I counter your counter. I counter your counter of my counter. And it's just like, oh, well, I'm out of things to do. So now we're just like, that's the end of it. And at first it was really frustrating, but what I liked was it actually kept this rate of play of like, I've got my deck, which has in my mind, a pretty clear strategy. I'm trying to do these things. You have your deck, which has a defined strategy, and you have objectives. And one of us is going to reach a point where it's like, I don't have a win condition. Or you're clearly going to hit your win condition quicker, and we're just going to call it a match. And I enjoyed that it was like, actually, for being a physical, one-on-one card game, there's a good rate of play, and you can there's no shame in just sort of being like, and I concede, like, because it's, I drew badly, or I just couldn't execute, or you were able to just roll out quicker, and let's shuffle and let's do it again. And I that's what I really enjoyed, like at the releases and stuff like that, of just this quick, oh, you know what, I'm getting stomped, I concede, and now we're going to shuffle them and we're going to see if I can do better.
Yeah, and I think like on like the simpler scale, they've done a really great job of that stuff. And like they rolled out this thing called New World Order to try to like simplify the complexity of cards. And like I think that's what you're talking about, is like sort of streamlining a lot of that stuff. But then I feel like on the rarer side, for like constructed games, they just like amped up the power level of creatures that like just become so archetype defining that like what was interesting is like something like a counter spell, which is just like counter target spell, is like actually a pretty cheap card. So like as a new player, having access to stuff like that means you have more ways to play the game and interact. Whereas like now that counter spells are like pretty rare,
Yeah.
The only way to do it is to have creatures, and so
Yeah.
the rare creatures just stomp the common creatures, and so it's like, okay, that the barrier to entry and learn the game is really low, but the barrier to compete becomes really, really high.
Yeah. And I remember getting into it and buying some boosters at a store and having the guy at the store kind of saying like, hey, Magic's really fun, but if you are looking to like play this regularly, know that it's pretty much pay to win now. He's like, it's just if you can buy the best creatures, then like you win versus somebody who, has a cheap deck.
Yeah, and I'm hopeful that like they talk about the pendulum swinging back, and I'm kind of hopeful that like we'll start to see that get corrected, but I think it's kind of interesting to see it track alongside a company like Blizzard or like even Nintendo that's like a little bit older, and see how like play usability starts to creep into like the consciousness of these companies and like how each of them are responding to it. So I felt like that was kind of similar to what we've been talking about with both Nintendo and Blizzard.
Yeah. Well, we were kind of talking about like some of that competition, being able to get into, actually being able to compete in a game and the barrier to entry there, which is actually something I've been thinking about a lot lately, because that's something that I used to not care about at all. I was never interested in competing in games. I was always just, I want to play I want to have a nice single player experience, and that's fine. And then that really changed for me when Hearthstone came out, because suddenly it was like, oh, I'm always playing against a real person. I'm always playing against a human being, and starting to kind of look for that in other games. Like, I actually really enjoy this experience of playing against somebody, and that's what was the draw of Magic the Gathering, was like, oh, I can, have the fun of playing cards and actually like go play against other people, and enjoy that experience. And I find myself more and more drawn to competitive games or competitive modes in games, which is really different for me and kind of a new thing for me. And I wanted to talk about competition in gaming and competitive games kind of in general, as well as some of what I've been playing lately. But it's been a very new thing to me, but I've been really actually enjoying and looking for more competition in games.
Yeah, and I mean, I just started playing Splatoon recently, and like I also think Hearthstone is really the first game I played. Like, I played Magic forever, like probably a decade or more now, which is crazy to think about. But I think Hearthstone was like the first game I ever really played against another person online.
Okay,
like that was kind of a different experience for me. And so like I kind of have a similar thing with you, where I was like, oh, I'm not sure about this. How is this going? Oh, this is actually kind of fun. This is pretty cool. Yeah, this is exciting. And what it made me kind of think about was like a game like Splatoon, where I feel like for a while, like even like 5 years ago, competition really meant like these sniper shooter games, right? Which are like really fun, but have a high skill cap and not a lot of randomness. So like it's really hard to have fun against competent players when you're beginning. Yeah. But now there's games that have a lower barrier to entry, and also things you can do when you're not competing one-on-one against another human. So I'm thinking of things like laning in Heroes or League, or like painting when you're in Splatoon. Yeah. To where it's like, as a player, I can do things to help my team and like avoid direct competition against a player that like I know will wipe me. Yeah. And I think that's kind of cool. I think that's like a new thing that's really helped improve the genre.
Yeah, I mean, the only competitive experience that I had really had before, again, similar to you, before Hearthstone, was for a brief period of time, maybe 6 months at the most. I remember playing Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 on Xbox 360, because I had a couple of buddies that played it online. So I was like, okay, I'll get this game, and when I have some game time, we'll play. And I had fun with that. I mean, it was fun. Every now and again, I might win a match, and obviously that's not much more. Even the barrier to entry there is a lot lower because it's more kind of arcade style. But it was just like, most of the time I'm getting stomped. There's guys that have played in this game. They work part time and spend most of their time playing this game into all hours, and so they know every little nook and cranny to hide in. They know where all the weapons are, and so it was this if I'm not willing to like have this be what I do with my life, then it's really hard to stay competitive in this game. And I'm always playing in like, oh, here's your noob shoes, and get over into the noob, like the noob corral. But then Hearthstone was like, okay, like it's a lot easier to like get into the game, and then even if you don't have tons of time to devote to it, you can just kind of follow the meta. You can net deck, you can play what are the strong decks right now, or if you want to rank up, or you can focus on being more creative and just coming up with fun decks and be fine being in kind of the middle of the road as far as on ladder. I mostly play arena because it gives me like this. It hits all the buttons that I like. There's the competitive mode, but also getting to draft and try to build the best deck you can and see what other people got and respond, be more reactive to, oh man, this guy got lucky on his draw, and how can I counter that? So I don't know. Yeah, Hearthstone got me into it, and then Heroes of the Storm, a genre of game that I was not interested in. I had looked at. There was like this brief phase where everybody had a MOBA. It was like DC Comics had a MOBA.
There was a Lord of the Rings MOBA.
MOBA. Dota was big. League and Dota were already huge, and everybody was trying to cash in. Payless Shoe Source had the Payless Shoe Source MOBA coming out, the Noob Shoe MOBA. It was just like everybody was coming out with a MOBA, and I tried a couple, and I was like, this is just not the game for me. I hated the item shop thing. I hated last hits. But you have to be careful when you say that. I didn't like last hitting. I hated last hits. Hated them. And yeah, and the buried entry was huge. Like the item shop made no sense, and get ready to just have people just taking shits on your head for the entire match because you picked the wrong thing. And it just wasn't a fun kind of competition. And I sorry, go ahead.
And even pre-league, like your team didn't level up together. So like you can have different levels on different characters.
Right.
Which is like pretty cool from a competitive perspective, I guess. But if you're the new guy and like all four of your teammates are like pretty competent, they're going to know just how much you suck, and they're going to hate you for it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I still don't like, I'm still not interested in, oh, the dog is clicking on the floor behind me. I'm still not interested in League or Dota, because to me, a lot of those mechanics, they seem to cater to the 14-year-old who wants to get in there and call people names and be super toxic because, oh, you don't know how to 360 no scope. It's like, no, I have a job and a family, and I don't spend all day practicing last hitting or, reading up on these item builds. And so Heroes for me was actually more, they did more of the RPG style progression. Like, oh, you level up, and then you need to choose like new skills. You need to allot skill points. Basically, I was like, this is a mechanic that makes sense to me. It's like a really compressed like Diablo run, basically. And then things like the shared experience and the map objectives was just like, okay, this is much more like team focused, team oriented. But yeah, I've found myself more and more just like I'm playing a single player game, and I'm like, oh, what's the point? Like there's no win or losing. There's no winning or losing in this game, and that's just not like I've wanted that more, which has just been really weird for me.
Yeah, that makes me think about a podcast I listened to like 4 years ago, and how these two game designers were talking about Halo 3. And he was like, I think one of them was like a games research, and he's like, yeah, I'm thinking about doing some research for Halo 3, but I have to decide whether or not I'm gonna like commit to this because it's coming out soon, and if I don't start playing when the game releases, I'm gonna be too far behind the rest of the competitive scene to like actually be able to play this game online. And like how much that used to be the standard for video games, which is like either you got into it when it came out and then you could play competitively, or you were just like locked out of that game.
Yeah, and that's still how I feel about like StarCraft. Like I'd love to get into StarCraft because people tell me it's really fun, but at this point, I'm also hearing from people like, yeah, if you don't have 10 years of experience playing StarCraft, like you don't stand a chance. Like it is only for people who have been playing it for a long time now.
Yeah, and it's just like so cool now how it's like, okay, the ranking systems have gotten better, matchmaking has gotten better, the actual game design has gotten better so that like we can differences in skill level don't just like totally destroy the game.
Yeah.
And so now like a game can last for multiple years and like be a growing thing like Hearthstone, like Heroes of the Storm. Hopefully like Splatoon 2 will be.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, the elephant in the room here is Overwatch, which is just, I mean, it's huge. It's, you know, depending on the day, it's either the number 1 or number 2 or number 3 game on Twitch. It's, you know, it's purely competitive, like, and yet it's really accessible. Like you can have a lot of fun in that game, even if you're not very good at it. And they've done a good job of adding modes where, you know, you don't have to be this god at FPS games, and yet it's 100% competitive. Like you can't play the game and not compete against other people. And it's crazy. Like I expected to not really enjoy it because, I can only compete against other people. But that's another game where it's like, I'm kind of itching to get in there and like try to win a game against an enemy team. Like,
well, and I think the thing that Blizzard has done the best, actually, is not allowing like turtling to be a productive mechanic or like strategy type. Really, in any of the 3 games that I've really spent any time like researching or talking about, which is like Heroes, Hearthstone, and Overwatch.
Yeah.
Where like when I played League back when I worked at this little game startup, the guy who founded it was like one of the early League of Legends like employees, and he loved it. But what would happen is when you were down by even like a little bit level wise or like gold wise, you would just turtle. And so like it would mean like you didn't go that far from your base, you were staying with your minion waves, like you just didn't interact with the opponent if you couldn't, and like you would try to eke out a victory, right?
Yeah.
And most of the time you would lose.
Right.
And it sucked because the game extended by 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so like things like the objectives with Heroes of the Storm where you like have to come to the middle of the map, interact with the opponent.
Yeah, you have to get out there and do something. Yeah.
The game's going to end. You know, things like Hearthstone where it caps out at 10 crystals. Like once you run out of cards, like you will start taking damage. You can't just kind of sit there and do nothing. Well,
and even Hearthstone with its, you know, you have 75 seconds to take your turn. Right. And that's it. And then you rope, and if you rope too many times in a row, it starts just like ending your turn for you, basically, if you're just sitting there and not being interactive. I enjoy Overwatch is hyper aggressive about AFK. Like if you get like 30 seconds to move your mouse or to make a lateral movement before it starts like a 15-second timer, and then you're out. Whether that's at the pregame screen, whether that's in game, like they're very aggressive about like booting people for not contributing and not engaging.
Well, and just like given the objectives, like games last a very short amount of time, and it's not just like, oh, how many kill to death ratio do we have as a team?
Yeah. And
so I think it's stuff like that where you're like promoting good play patterns, you're decreasing the amount of time for people to yell at each other. You're like allowing for these like minute decisions to impact the game.
Yeah.
But you're not saying like, oh, the only way to win is through these like really tiny min-maxing decisions we can make.
Yeah.
And then like noobs wearing shoes just like get screwed.
Right. The shoe noobs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and so back to like what like is appealing about these competitive games, because I've been really thinking about like, why do I like playing these games that, you know, historically like 10 years ago I wouldn't have touched with a 10-foot pole. But I keep thinking about like the idea of like having stakes in a game. Like what's at stake here when I'm playing this, and I think it's like it's an important thing to like think about when like in game design is what are you putting at stake for the player. Because I think about contrast a game like Breath of the Wild, which is the opposite of a competitive game. It's, you know, take your time, relax, enjoy the world. But it feels like there's something at stake because the fantasy is really good, the story is really good, and so the stakes are the stakes that the fantasy is creating for you, right? What the game is telling you is at stake. You know, the kingdom is at stake, And so that's like a way that game draws you in, is through its story, through those sort of artificial stakes. But in a competitive game, like, what's at stake? Well, the game, like, you're going to win or lose. Like, the other team is going to get the thing, and you're not going to get the thing. And I don't know. It's really interesting to see, like, how do games like create that sense of there being something at stake. Because I even think back to playing like Modern Warfare, and it just didn't feel like anything was at stake. It's just everybody's running around shooting each other, and you're trying to be the guy that gets the most kills, versus something like Heroes of the Storm or Overwatch, where it's like we're trying to capture this objective or move this thing, and there's just a level of tension that's there that I think like kind of contributes to that little bit of like addictive feeling of like I got to get back in there. I got to try to get that objective, one or whatever it is.
Yeah, and I really think it comes back to what you've been saying, which is like the objectives and like in some sense bringing some of those Zelda mechanics, obviously not Breath of the Wild, but like early RPGs where like you have an objective, and then instead of it being like, oh, this is your sole objective and you're by yourself, it's like, no, this is your objective and you have teammates and
right.
You're competing against someone else.
Yeah, there's another team trying to do the same thing that you're trying to do right now.
And I think that's what makes it so engaging, whereas like I think earlier competitive games, it was more just like, and you're just like trying to have a number that's higher than your opponent's.
Yeah.
Which is like, I think a lot of people get enjoyment from that, but
yeah, well, it definitely can be fun. I mean, just jumping into a game, running around, shooting can be a lot of fun. But
right, but I think having it be driven by something besides like a raw number is like really exciting. It's kind of like what you said about Magic too, where it's like, oh, the objective is to see like whose deck and like whose idea like works better. And I think that's really cool, instead of it just being like, oh, the objective is like how much more skillful I am at this.
Right.
Which is part of it. But if it's harder for it to be a driving force as like a player coming back to a game.
Yeah.
Just because I'm going to stop leveling up my skill after a while.
Yeah.
Because I just don't have time. Like we said,
Well, there's a game that I've been playing, and it's blowing up right now, even though it's early access on Steam. But PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, which is another game that's not a genre that I would normally be interested in. And it's kind of this like survival battle royale type game, like DayZ or H1Z1 is the other really big one. And so the idea is that each match you're thrown onto this giant island. And it's like up to 99 players. It's usually around 98 or 99. And you want to be close to the last one standing, or you actually win if you're the last person alive. And so guns and ammo and equipment all spawns randomly. And so you want to try to find a good spot to go and just sort of loot and equip stuff and modify your weapons and sort of get like enough good gear built up while avoiding other players who might have gotten like better stuff before you did. And then the game continually shrinks the allowable area, so where you're allowed to be keeps getting smaller and smaller, and if you're outside of that boundary, you take damage, and eventually like you'll die from not being in the playable area. So there is a sense of you got to keep moving. You can't just you can't just turtle and wait for like everybody else to die. It's forcing people closer and closer together. But it creates this really fun, there's this really fun blend of tension, of sort of the scariness of like, I hope that nobody's in here, or I hope I can kind of like remain undetected until I can get enough good gear. There's also this, this sort of timer, like, oh, I also got to be thinking about when is the boundary going to shrink again? And do I need to start moving that way? There's shooter skill required. Like you have to be able to shoot your guns at people with somewhat accuracy. So it feels like a really good blend of like skill, but also randomness. One of my first matches, I only got one kill, but I managed to come in like 10th. Like out of 100 people in the game, I was there were only 9 more people who survived after me, because mostly I was just able to like keep my head down, stick to the trees, stick to the walls, like stick to shelter. And actually like survive for a long time, which was, that in and of itself was a really fun experience of, I don't need to be the best headshotter. Like I just need to be smarter than 90 other people. And so I don't know, there's just something, again, it's something I never thought I'd play a game like that. And yet it's actually really enjoyable to get in there, and try to get some kills and try to survive as long as possible, and to start another match because, man, I was freaking 45th that time. Like, I want to do better next time.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's this really cool combination that's been happening of like speed of play, objectives, having like alternate win conditions and like ways to interact that isn't just the like main fight mechanics, like one-on-one.
Yeah. And things
and I
like,
think,
sorry,
all of that has kind of been combining to like really spawn sort of like a pretty cool time for competitive games right now.
Yeah. I agree. Well, I think we have rambled on about long enough, and that's some good stuff.
Yeah.
So
I think we hit a theme really well.
So I would encourage everybody to check out Heroes of the Storm with all the 2.0 stuff that's going to be coming out in the next couple months. There's a lot of cool stuff going on there. And PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds, come find me on there. I'm Bear Guns. I don't even know if it works that way. I don't know how things work. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun. So excited to kind of see how that game evolves. And yeah.
And Splatoon 2 is coming out in like a month for the 3 people in the world that have the Nintendo Switch.
I'm really excited. I was not able to do any of the like global test fire stuff, but I'm really excited.
Yeah, I'm pumped. I think it's going to be a good year for competitive gaming.
Cool. All right. Well, be on the lookout for hopefully a bonus Switch episode coming soon where we can get all of our Switchiness out in its own segregated, separate area without, bringing this main feed down, because I know people are sick of talking about the Switch. But we will be back in 2 weeks. So until then, thanks for listening, everybody. Have fun out there.
Yep. Thanks.